Prix night continues on LWT with high-speed entertainment right through to the first race of the season in the early hours of the morning. Stand by for Murray Walker.
Well, Martin, here we go again. Sunny Australia, the skies are blue, a new season. I can hardly wait. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm really looking forward to it, hoping we can work well together and give the viewers some good commentating to go with a good Grand Prix season.
Yeah, so do I, but watch it here. Remember what happened last year?
What are you talking about? This is Turn 3 Melbourne. They don't come any easier than this.
Martin, just remember. Well, Martin, thankfully you're not going to have that problem this year. You're going to be nice and safe in the commentary box with me.
Yeah, I was never any good at parking, actually, but, yeah, I mean, what actually happens, Murray? Do you kick me when I've got to say something, or what? I mean, what are we going to do?
Well, we'll see, but there's a big night coming up for Grand Prix fans,
really?
Because we've got the Clive James Grand Prix special, then into Grand Prix the movie, and then it's the Australian Grand Prix live on ITV, you and I.
The movie, you were the commentator in that too, were you?
I thought you were driving in it.
No, my granddad told me about it.
Grand Prix racing, the fastest, most glamorous sport on the globe. Tonight, Clive James meets the man behind the helmets, the greatest number of Grand Prix drivers ever assembled in a studio, including world champion Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, plus two ex-world champions, Jackie Stewart and Nigel Mansell, and the man who's been called the greatest British driver of all time, Stirling Moss. They're all here in the Clive James Formula One show.
Only a few hours from now, this screen will go live to Melbourne and transmit the earth-shattering start of the opening race in the first Formula One season to be covered by ITV. It's a good time to look at the checkered flag history and the mega-budget, multi-time zone present status of this globe-girdling extravaganza. For this unprecedented program, celebrities in other fields are here because they're mad about Formula One, and key figures of Formula One, who usually gather only at the racetrack wherever it is in the world, are here too. As we scan their intelligent faces, we can tell these people are highly qualified. Scanning my face, you can guess that my only qualification for being here is that I'm mad about the racing cars. I can't even drive an ordinary car in a way acceptable to the general public or the police, but the Formula One drivers do my driving for me. They also do my bravery, skill, and youth. In the fastest cars anyone can afford to build, they fight it out to a finish while I watch. That's what Formula One is, a dream come true. The cars are boys' toys in a big way. $1 million micro models that you can actually get into before you run them into each other, and your mother can't make you stop. For the spectators who wish they were doing it but are secretly glad they aren't allowed to, the first impression of a Formula One race is of a blur that screams, bumper cars gone bananas, a bobsleigh battle with asphalt for ice. It takes time to sort out that these hurtling machines have drivers inside them who don't want to stop doing this, but want to go on doing it, no matter what happens, and a lot can. A car that cost a fortune can convert itself to scrap iron in a split second. While the bit the driver sits in is so strong nowadays that he's hard to hurt, the rest of the car is all too eager to spread itself around the landscape. But it isn't enough for the driver to keep his car and himself in one piece. He has to do that going faster than anyone else. If he can, he emerges at the end of the season as world champion. He came late to Formula One, but in only 4 seasons he has lived the complete experience from nowhere to the pinnacle. Will you welcome the reigning world champion, Damon Hill? Well, it's been quite a year. hasn't it?
It's a bit of an understatement, I think, Clive. It's certainly been a year that had everything packed into it, yeah.
And you snatched victory from the jaws of almost not victory.
But it's like that all the way through a season, you know. There's always plenty of opportunity to let it slip, and but the tension made it all more worthwhile, I think, when it came off.
Well, that's what I was most impressed by, the way you held up under pressure, I'm bound to say. You can't answer that. That's a compliment.
Okay, I won't answer that. I'll accept it.
How has it affected your life, being champion?
I've sort of learned how to receive awards, I think, is one of the things I've been doing a lot. And I've been absolutely spoiled everywhere I've gone, and people have been fantastic to me, and it's been absolutely amazing.
Last year, Williams not renewing your contract was very public. Did you feel bitter about that at times?
I don't think I really had time to feel any bitterness. I was in the middle of trying to win the championship, so I kind of pressed on regardless and put it behind me.
Well, Patrick Head is one of the team bosses at Williams, is actually here tonight. Now's your chance to have a word with him. Would you like to say something to Patrick?
Hello, Patrick. Miss me?
Patrick Head, have you got anything to say to David?
No, I just wish him all the best for 1997. Hello, Damon. Good to see you.
I think the warmth is so touching. Okay. How's it been working with Tom Walkinshaw and the Arrows team?
It's been very good so far. We're hard pushed, working very, very hard to get things ready, and they're very professional and doing a great job at the moment.
Well, if I said, do you seriously think you can win again? That would be an insult to the team. But do you think you can win again?
Well, I have no doubt that I can win again. It's just a matter of when, and that's the unknown factor at the moment.
And how long are you going to give it?
How long have you got? As long as it takes, I think.
Well, Damon, development driving is one of the things you do brilliantly well, so Arrows is lucky to have you, so good luck with the season.
Thank you very much.
But Damon won't be the only driver on the track in 1997. Let's meet some of the others. Driving for Williams, Jacques Villeneuve from Canada. Last season was his first season in Formula One, and he almost pipped Damon for the championship. Driving the other Williams, Heinz-Harald Frentzen from Germany. Ein cool customer taking over Damon's hot seat. Driving for McLaren, David Coulthard from Scotland. Very quick in the car and very charming out of it, helped by that square-jawed, radiant smile. Driving the other McLaren, floppy-haired Mika Häkkinen from Finland. Hurt badly in Adelaide at the end of the season before last, but he's come all the way back. Driving for Sauber, Johnny Herbert from Britain. He's won Grand Prix races before, but has his car got as much fizz, verve and grit as he has? Driving the other Sauber, Nicola Larini from Italy. A talented driver long in search of a car that will go. Copes well with being called Nicola. Pedro Diniz is Damon Hill's teammate at Arrows. He comes from one of Brazil's wealthiest families, and he's doing an increasingly good job of living down his image as a rich boy who can buy a ride. Driving for Tyrrell, Jos Verstappen from Holland, a country previously famous for Rembrandt, Vermeer and Van Gogh, none of whom could drive a racing car. Driving for Minardi, Ukio Katayama from Japan, sometimes performs so brilliantly during the race that he is allowed to leave early. To thousands of Japanese would-be drivers, Kata is their Damon Hill. Vincenzo Sospiri was a star in kart racing in Formula 3000. Now he's in Formula One, driving a brand new Lola that might need everything he's got. Driving for Jordan, Giancarlo Fisichella. He's been working on his English all winter, and he can already say, "Madam, what you are proposing is physically impossible in my overalls." Driving for Stewart, Rubens Barrichello from Brazil, where the fans loudly expect him to be the next Ayrton Senna, and he could do it if he had a fast car. Will the new Stewart be it? Driving the other Stewart, Jan Magnussen from Denmark. No relation to Magnus Magnussen except for his motto, "I've started, so I'll finish." Okay, Jacques Villeneuve, your tip for world champion this year, what's going to stop you?
Well, there's a lot of people that are going to try. Heinz to start with, and Michael with Ferrari, then both David and Mika with the McLaren, the two Benetton drivers, and all the other guys. Everybody's going out there to try and get the best result. And they're going to get closer this year than they were last year, so the competition should be good. Our car last year was very, very good, and it's going to be difficult to improve it.
Everybody in Formula One says that the Williams could win with your grandmother driving it, so where does that leave the driver?
Well, in the back seat.
Last year you were Damon's problem, and this year Heinz Harald could be yours. Are you bothered by that?
No, I hope he's going to be a bother, because racing without competition would be boring.
Heinz Harald, you're in Damon's seat at Williams, and a lot of people think that he should never have lost it. That makes you the bad guy. Are you coping with this?
Well, first I have to say I'm very delighted to drive for Williams. And another thing I have to say that Damon has done a very good job in the past years. And winning the world title, world championship last year, was evident enough.
Are you two speaking, by the way? Damon and Heinz Harald?
He didn't answer the question, did he?
We have another go at it. Finished. No, it's... I don't know. It's it could be that the people are throwing with tomatoes at me here in England. But anyway, I have to say that Damon has done a good job. That's all I can say.
Vincenzo Zaspiri, you've been world karting champion and Formula 3000 champion, but now you're finally in Formula One. You're in a car that's, how shall I put this? It's not likely to be a front runner. Is it better to be on top of the heap in the lower formulas or bottom of the pile in Formula One?
Well, I think it's always better to win and to be at the top, but I think you have to work your way to get there, as Damon did with Brabham when he went into Formula One, and then now he's world champion. I hope to do the same thing. We started with a new team, Master Carlola Formula One. We have a 4-year program, so I think in 4 years we will do a good job to get there.
David, last year the McLaren really wasn't up there. How do you cope knowing that you aren't going to win? I've thought long and hard about these questions.
Well, actually, believe it or not, every time I took to the circuit, I thought I was going to win, and it always came as a great surprise at the end of Sunday afternoon that I hadn't. But no, you start the race believing that you're going to give it your best shot, and you can win races even if you're not in the front row, because other cars drop out, and shit happens.
And Mika Häkkinen. Mika, it's your 5th year at McLaren. Is this the year for you and the team?
Well, I thought my year's going to be already 93, and it still really hasn't happened. But I believe and testing what we have done so far has been quite encouraging. So I believe this year is going to be a good year. So I hope that means we're going to win some races.
Johnny, you couldn't even walk when you started driving in Formula One because your legs have been smashed up in Formula 3000. Why did you go on?
I think it was just basically that I had that enthusiasm to get back into racing, and I knew that if I tried hard enough and tried my best to getting the fitness back and getting the mobility back in the feet, that I could give it another go. If I failed at that, at least inside I knew I gave it my best shot of actually getting back into racing in Formula One.
Ukyo Katayama. Hajimemashite, Katayama-san. Dozo, yoroshiku. Ukyo, in your first Formula One season you had 3 shunts. In your second you had 4. In your third, 6. And in your fourth, 7. What are your plans for this season?
I didn't know, so you were counting the number of my shunts. So, don't try to upset Giancarlo Minardi. Yes, of course, I try to finish all races.
Jos Verstappen, you've got a reputation for being very fast, but also trifle hair-raising. Now you've got a good drive at Tyrrell. Are you planning to calm down your act a bit?
Certainly, we had a lot of problems during the years I'm in Formula One. Had a few crashes, that's right. But it was not always my fault. But I must say, for sure, I'm trying to finish all the races what I can. But I tried many times. But sometimes you go off and it's not your fault.
Me too.
Well, your team boss, Ken Tyrrell, is in the audience. Ken Tyrrell, what are you going to do to calm your boy down?
We had Jos at Silverstone today on a wet track, and we didn't need to calm him down. I thought every lap he went out on looked like a qualifying lap. And he looks good to me.
That's inspiring leadership, Ken. Thank you very much. Jan Magnussen, when you drove in Formula 3, you were seen as being a Formula One champion of the future, but now you're actually in Formula One. You're chiefly famous for not caring very much about fitness and being a heavy smoker. Now, Jackie Stewart has announced he's going to put you on the straight and narrow. Do you think he'll be able to reform you?
I'm sure he's going to try.
Well, as you know, Jackie Stewart is here tonight. He's sitting in the audience. Jackie, are you going to impose your will on this boy?
To say the very least. I don't think it's going to take much, Will. In fact, if it gets really difficult, I'll give him to Paul. That's what delegation is.
Right. So you just tear the cigarettes from his hand, is that it? Yeah.
No, I think he's going to want to do it, Clive. I think he's hungry. I think he knows this is a big opportunity for him. He's going to need his fitness, and he's going to have to breathe at the same time.
Well, if people are hungry, they smoke, Jackie. Pedro Diniz, you come from a wealthy background. Your family owns the Brazilian equivalent of Sainsbury's. Is being rich a help when you're trying to break into Formula One?
When you are in the car driving, it doesn't matter if you have money, if your family has money. You need to drive, and you need to drive by yourself. It doesn't matter, really.
Giancarlo Fisichella, last year you got bounced from the Minardi team because they ran out of money and they needed a driver with some of his own. How hard is it to keep going in Formula One without cash behind you?
It's nearly impossible. You need money or you need luck. I was lucky.
Rubens Barrichello, you're a Brazilian, and the nation's eye is on you to carry the mantle of Ayrton Senna. Do you feel the pressure of that?
Well, it's been very difficult to begin with. 94, 95 was very, very difficult. But I think I've coped quite well with that pressure. And, you know, beginning a new career with the Stewart Ford team, it's a new life for me.
When I go to a Grand Prix, I can't help noticing the one thing that never changes. The paddock is still full of pretty women. Giancarlo, the female readers of F1 Racing Magazine elected you as #1 on their list of the top 10 sexiest drivers. Now, do you find the abundance of female attention distracting?
No, I have a girlfriend. So, when I am at the races, I just concentrate on my job.
Ah. Johnny. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Johnny, this list of the top 10 sexiest drivers, you aren't even on it. What went wrong? I think you're sexy.
Yeah, which magazine was it?
This is F1. You want a copy? I've got it here.
No. Oh, there's hardly any sold of that magazine, I think. It's a shame for me, really. Again, I don't notice these sort of things because I'm dedicated to my job.
I've been a TV viewer and fan of Formula One for a long time, and I've watched it evolve, and I think with Ayrton Senna, this is a big, deep question that goes to the heart of the sport for me. With Ayrton Senna, he was a great driver, but he brought in the attitude that sportsmanship meant nothing and you should do anything the rules allow in order to win, up to and including pushing the other guy off the track. Now, was he right, Jacques?
Well, I'm not sure he started that, but no, I don't think it's right when you race like that. You're still human beings in there, and there's right and wrong. And I believe the respect is the most important thing. And a lot of times people ask you, do you hate the other opponents? Do you have to hate them to race well? And I think the best racing is in between friends when you know there's a huge amount of respect.
Well, Damon, at the end of Japan, at the end of the last season, all you had to do was crash into Jacques and take them both out of the race, and the championship would have been yours. Did you consider it?
Well, yeah, that was my plan initially, was to crash into him.
I didn't give him the chance.
But he made such a poor start, I couldn't see him.
So the thought never really crossed your mind? Huh?
Only for about 3 weeks.
Gentlemen, I'm going to thank you at that point, but stick around because there's a lot more to do and a lot more to say about Formula One. Thank you very much, the drivers.
More from the drivers later, but in part 2 we look at the history of Formula One with world champions Jackie Stewart and Nigel Mansell and the great Stirling Moss.
When I first got fascinated with Grand Prix racing back in the 1950s, it looked very different. The cars looked less like spaceships and more like something you might drive, and the drivers sat up where you could see them, in helmets barely more than hard hats, so that you could see their faces. They were the faces of my heroes. One of them is still consistently voted one of the greatest drivers of all time, certainly the greatest driver never to be world champion. Even today, when there have been several British world champions, his is the name the public always invokes on the road when they shout, "Who do you think you are? Stirling Moss?" There it is, the Maserati 250F, and it doesn't look like the cars of today. It looks beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful. What's the layout?
Well, the layout is the engine's up there to start with, in the front. It's got an ordinary sort of gearbox, a manual change, 4 or 5 speeds. This one's got 5. It's then got an enormous fuel tank at the back here, about 40 gallons, and then we've put extra fuel in there, so it's a bit like a tanker when you're finished. And the tyres, as you notice, that's the biggest difference, I guess. The normal tyres would be out here, and these were the best they could do and work quite well.
How fast would it go?
About 165, I suppose, 160, depends who you're selling it to.
And what about through a corner?
Well, round a corner, take Stowe, which is a corner at Silvis at the end of the straight. It's a very big sort of right angle. You go into that about 155, you know, coming down. Then you brake down, change down a cog or two, and you probably do 108, 190 for Fangio.
I've seen photos of you doing that, and the car's sideways.
Well, half sideways is what we call four-wheel drift, and that's when all 4 wheels are pointing the same way and the car's actually is turning, and you're balancing it on the throttle. That was the beauty of this beautiful car.
Is that because these narrow wheels had much less adhesion?
Yeah, partly that, and the balance of the car was set up that way.
And there's nothing squeezing the car down. It's
the only thing holding this down is the weight, which, of course, when you go faster, it lessens.
It looks kind of, shall we say, fragile?
Yes, you could say that. Yeah. It's lightweight tube, and yeah, it was fragile.
What happened if it hit something?
It broke. I mean, it crumbled up a bit. It depends how hard you hit it. But we didn't wear seat belts, no roll bars, mainly because if you had a crash, 50-50 chance you're going to catch fire, so we want to get out.
Yeah, I get the point.
Yeah.
What was the sportsmanship like in that
Tremendous.
time?
Tremendous. I mean, we were real friends. I remember going to race in Australia, and Sir Jack Brabham, I broke my car in practice, the back axle, and he came along and gave me a spare, which enabled me to beat him, which I thought was rather nice. But if he hadn't done it, the others would have done it. You know, that's the way it was. It was a great sport.
And there was much less money in it in those days. Huh?
Yeah, quite a lot less money. In 1961, I was the highest paid Formula One driver. I did 57 races, and my total gross was 32,000. I paid tax on 8,000, which was good money. I mean, not by today's standards, but it was good money for me.
Yeah. And there was no advertising on the car, no endorsements, no sponsorship?
No advertising at all. The only advert, if you like, that I ever carried in my life was a small thing that said Dunlop, and I did that because they gave me free overalls.
James, telling your stories touch me. Will you stay with us? We have a lot more to say about the sport as we go on. Thank you very much, Stirling Moss. "16 years of relentless technical development later, the drivers were harder to see inside their helmets, but from inside one helmet came the unmistakably confident Scottish accent of a man who could make a bad car look good and take a good car first to the finish line in a full 27 of all the 99 Grand Prix races he ever entered. Today, on the verge of launching his own racing team, his name looms as large as ever, Jackie Stewart. Jackie, this thing must look familiar.
Yes, in fact, this car's apparently won more Grand Prix races than any car in the history of motorsport. Ken Tyrrell did a very good job.
So what's the layout?
Well, of course, it's different from Stirling's car in the sense that the engine and the gearbox are behind the driver. the seat is a much more reclined seat, almost lying down, in fact, when you consider the driver's position versus the Maserati. Aerodynamics are clearly different. You've got this enormous wing in the back, which of course is pushing the car down onto the road. The front end aerodynamically, again, is very useful for its time, you must remember, because this is not just yesterday. The tyres are clearly much larger, and of course a lot more rubber on the road. So that gives us a lot of grip as well.
How fast would the thing go?
Well, it was about 180, just maybe a fraction more than 180 miles an hour on the straights.
But the big difference must have been through the corners with all this adhesion.
Well, it really was at that time the leading edge of aerodynamics way back then, and it really pressed it down.
How about that corner that Sterling took at Silverstone, Stowe? How fast would this one go through it?
About 130, I would think, maybe a push at 135. It was a fourth gear corner on a 5-speed gearbox.
And exactly how dangerous was racing at the time these cars were in vogue?
Well, that was a very negative thing. Motor racing safety in those days simply didn't exist. And in fact, in one year, in 1968, a driver died every single month for 4 consecutive months on the same day. But we had a horrific record at that time on safety.
Well, you were the man who actually changed Formula One from a blood sport into what we know today. Would you have been able to push those safety measures through if you hadn't been champion?
No, I don't think I would.
Sterling, do you regret driving before these safety measures were there?
No, I'm very pleased I did. I mean, to me, half the thrill of racing is the danger. I love Jackie. I think he's a great guy, but we have different ideas on this, and I feel that it should be dangerous, because otherwise everybody out there would want to get in the car and have a go. And I think we ought to be idiots. That they say, well, those crazy idiots doing that. And having said that, obviously one has to be for safety, because it's the obvious way to go. But I think the danger of motor racing was an important, integral part of the sport as it was in my time. It's now a different thing, of course.
Jackie, is he crazy?
No, I don't think. I think he's there, but and he's there to prove it. So therefore, he survived it. But I think really, the unnecessary hazards have to be removed, because in those days it was not good. The public could have been involved. We had to ensure the future prosperity of the sport.
Well, speaking of prosperity, by this time the advertisements are on the car. Obviously the money was coming in.
Very much when he got there, very much.
Scotsman?
Well, let me put it to you. How much did you earn compared with, say, Sterling's big year?
The 1971 year, I think I earned about 1.2 million. But in those days, that was an awful lot of money, because...
Not like now.
Not like now, but... I mean, to somebody like Clive James, that's nothing today.
Sterling, you wouldn't be human if you didn't think that you were too early for the gravy train.
Yes, I was for the gravy train, but not for the fun. I'm lucky. I was sufficiently good that I made a good living. I mean, I made a living as well as I would have as a solicitor or whatever. But I had the fun, and that's something that I wouldn't swap. I'm sorry, obviously, I didn't make the big money, because it'd be a lot easier now. I can coast more easily.
Well, Jackie and Sterling, you've got a lot to talk about, so stick around and talk about it later on. Thank you very much, Jackie Stewart. Moving on, until only yesterday, the most bulldog breed, bold and brave of all the British world champions, won his 31 Grand Prix races in cars that look like the ones we know today, perhaps a notch short of the full technical refinement, but that's the way he liked things, slightly hairy. For his countless British fans, his absence from the sport is a source of pain, assuaged only by the hope that even now he might come back. He's come back tonight, Nigel Mansell. Well, Nigel, you must recognise this one.
Well, I'm recognising the haircut. You could be a Grand Prix driver. This is the evolution. This is the evolution of Grand Prix drivers.
I get it. That's duly noted. Now, what about this car? This is you won the championship in this one.
Yeah, this is a fantastic FW14, and I think the most unique thing about this car is the aerodynamics. We had variable suspension. And, I mean, we could alter gizmos in the car here to give it oversteer, understeer, or balance it as nicely as possible. As you can see, the steering wheel won't come off. That's because I was going to show you that this car doesn't have a gear lever. It has paddles behind the steering wheel. But just fantastic car.
So it's not all that different. The cars now are a more refined version of this. This is
Yeah, I
getting
mean,
near it,
it's very, very similar. I think, you know, the technology with the computers and everything else, it's just refined totally. But, I mean, the biggest gains always is aerodynamics.
Well, what was the top speed on the straights? Tell us that.
You can, this was probably over 220 miles an hour, somewhere like Monza or Hockenheim.
But the incredible thing was, because of the aerodynamics and the traction and everything, it's fast around the corners too.
Yeah, the cornering speed, I think the most fantastic qualifying lap I did was at Silverstone on the Stowe corner. And you go down the straight there upwards of 200 miles an hour, and if you hang on to everything, you just turn in flat out and go around at 200.
Yeah, you would, yeah. Sterling, your car couldn't do that, could it?
I never tried, to tell you the truth.
Just let me bring you back to the aspect that you can actually have a shunt in this thing going very, very fast, and that bit will protect you much more than it used to, yeah?
Yeah, you hope so.
Yeah.
They're strapped in, he can't get out like we can.
Well, how about that big shunt you had, Sterling, which really brought your career to an end?
Oh, well, yeah, well, that was a bit different. I couldn't get out of that one. I didn't know it was going to happen.
But suppose you were in something as strong as this, you would have...
Oh, if I'd been in one like this, certainly I'd be racing well, I don't know about today, because I'm a bit old. But I would have got on, I would have got on with
No,
Jack.
hang on, Matt Nigel here's doing all right.
Well,
Sterling, do you regret not having driven something as technically advanced as this?
I would love to, the technical side I would have loved. I wouldn't swap my era for now, but I'd love to have done the technical side, yes, certainly. I think it's quite fascinating. I really do.
Nigel, will we see you in a Grand Prix car again?
Well, you never know, do you?
Well, no, we don't. That's what we want to know.
If you got a good seat, then anything's possible. We're just watch this space.
Yeah. Jackie, you're starting up your own team, and this is a big venture. And is there danger of egg on your face if it doesn't work?
I don't understand the business about the egg in our face. Everybody's saying, why are you taking a risk like this? I don't see it as such. We're going into it because it's another part of motor racing. We've had Paul Stewart Racing now for a few years in the lesser formulas. Now we're stepping up to the big time.
If those two whippersnapper drivers you've got don't work out, there's a couple here going spare. Yeah.
Well, they're too expensive.
Well, gentlemen, these are obviously ongoing discussions, and I leave you to them for now. Thank you very much, Nigel Mansell, Jackie Stewart, and Sterling Moss.
In part 3, more from the drivers, plus the voice of Formula One, Murray Walker, and a surprise guest by satellite.
Welcome back to Formula One. Under all the money, hype, noise and high-tech talk, Formula One is simple, and it's been simple since Ben-Hur drove a Formula One chariot. But there's no denying that in its modern form, Formula One looks complicated. For example, restrictions on fuel and wear and tear on tyres compel pit stops. How many pit stops is a matter of strategy, and how fast the pit stop is can make the difference between winning and losing. Constant drill by the pit crew can get the pit stop time down to a few seconds, as the Williams team demonstrate. After the car goes up on the jack, all 4 wheels are changed while the fuel tank is filled again under pressure with up to 80 litres of highly flammable juice. If the whole job takes longer than 9 seconds, it's a slow stop. But sometimes things go wrong, and we're given a not-so-gentle reminder that a racing car isn't just a multi-million-dollar jigsaw puzzle, it's a magic lantern whose genie is just burning to be let out. Just Verstappen, you were in the middle of all that. Could you feel the heat?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you could feel the heat very, very easily, and as well because my visor was a bit open, and the fuel came inside the helmet. So when the fire was there, it was all very warm and hot. But I must say, in a couple of seconds, everything was solved, and you got out of the car, and basically that was it.
Well, pit stops are just one example of how it helps to know what's involved. Some of my questions have been answered, and I'm sure there are members of the audience here tonight who are just as keen to hear further fascinating Formula One facts from those who know. Any questions? Roger Cook.
I know it sounds trite, Clive, but like you, I harboured a boyhood desire to be a racing driver. What was against me, I think, was too much bulk and not enough latent talent. But is that why these guys are here? Is this the realisation of a boyhood dream?
Well, maybe, Jacques, can I ask you that? Is that what you wanted to do when you were a boy?
As far as I can remember, yeah. It's not that it was a dream, because I was growing up in that world. So to me, it was more a question of, well, one day I'll be doing it, so I just took it out of my mind and never thought about it again.
But skiing is what you did seriously when you were a kid, wasn't it?
Yeah. First of all, because nobody would bring me to the go-kart, and once my father died, my mother didn't want to be a mechanic, so skiing was easier.
Yeah. Ukyo, did you want to be a racing driver when you were a kid?
Yeah, I wanted to be an explorer or mountain climber.
So what went wrong? Not enough mountains in Japan?
Yeah, so I need a long time to explain why I'm here.
Honor Blackman.
Why are there no women drivers in Formula One?
It's a good question. Damon, what's the answer?
There were some women drivers. There was a couple of attempts, but they didn't seem to make it through. I don't know. It's a very male-dominated environment, but there should really be a women's category for racing, I guess, is the answer. I mean, you have women's tennis and women's golf, and it is very physical. So there are women are at a disadvantage on a strength level, but they shouldn't be. Rally. There have been very many successful rally women drivers.
Mika, what do you think?
Damon said already quite a lot, but I think would be really to have something more prettier in Formula One than this race.
Carol Smiley.
Do any of the guys have any pre-race superstitions?
What about you, David? You got any pre-race superstition?
I always get in the car from the can't remember. I always get in the car. No, I always get in the car from the right-hand side, and that's just because I dress to the left, and it's important to get the seat belts in the right way.
Yeah, what about you, Johnny?
Well, I get in much quicker, and I get in from the left, but it's not a superstition I have. It's actually a mechanic, because we had a good qualified session, and I did it from the left-hand side, so he always now makes me go in from the left-hand side, so I do.
David, there's something you're not telling us here. There's a rumour that you wear a special colour underwear and never any other kind.
Well, no, it's actually an auntie bought me when I was younger. A 3-pack of underpants that were very comfortable. So I lost one pair, but then I used to always wear the other 2 pairs. One pair one day, of course, and then the second pair. But unfortunately, the typical thing where your mother says, you know, you should always have a clean pair of underpants in case you're in an accident. It actually happened in Spa in 1990 when I had a crash and I broke a bone in my leg, and I remember it well because actually Jackie was there, my mother was there, and my father, and of course my mother's in a terrible state because I'm lying there hurt, and they cut the race suit from me, and my pants I had them for 5 years, so they had holes in them. So my privates were sticking out, so it was a bit embarrassing. So I don't wear them anymore, but I still take them. They travel with me.
When I think of all the Mercy packages of underwear that are going to be on their way to Monaco tomorrow. Alistair Stewart, your hands up.
Clive, a lot of people who think they're good drivers get dangerously angry with other people on the roads. These guys are the best, but do any of them suffer from road rage?
Jos Verstappen, do you suffer from road rage?
Sometimes, especially when the car's in front of you shows you the brake lights. I think I get very upset. And it's a shame that it's not a race circuit.
Piquet once got out of the car and kicked another driver. And I saw in Monaco, I was there, Nigel, when you got out of the Lotus, walked away from it, thought about it, came back and kicked it.
And it deserved it, Clive.
Gary Bushell, is there? Question from Gary Bushell.
How do you start the car if there's no keys?
Well, it sounds like a simple question, but how do you start the car, Johnny? Johnny.
That's it. I've done it.
You just did it.
I just did it.
I mean, they do it, the team does it.
Exactly, yeah. No, you just give them a wave that you've switched it on, basically, and then they have a starch in the back, they push a button, and that's the starter, basically, and it turns it over.
Right.
That's it.
You can't do that yourself, so go out there and...
I think I get very upset. And it's a shame that it's not a race circuit.
Piquet once got out of the car and kicked another driver. And I saw in Monaco, I was there, Nigel, when you got out of the Lotus, walked away from it, thought about it, came back and kicked it.
And it deserved it, Clive.
Gary Bushell, is that Gary? No, question from Gary Bushell.
How do you start the car if there's no keys?
Well, it sounds like a simple question, but how do you start the car, Johnny? Johnny.
That's it. I've done it.
You just did it.
I just did it.
I mean, they do it, the team
Exactly, yeah. No, you just give them a wave that you've switched it on, basically, and then they have a starch in the back, they push a button, and that's the starter, basically, and it turns it over.
Right.
That's it.
You can't do that yourself, so go out
Well, you
there
can get out and do it.
Yeah.
It's not advisable.
Mary Nightingale.
I was wondering, Clive, is it an advantage to be small?
Well, I'm going to start with you, Damon, because you aren't. You've got size 11.5 feet, which I can't help noticing there. And are you the ideal size for a racing driver, or should they have scaled you down?
No, ideally I would have been, I could have been smaller. I'm on the limit, really, both with my feet, which are 11, not 11.5. Just a little point there. But on the height size, I have to really sit low in the car to, you know, so I'm scrunched up. I'm a little bit more uncomfortable than I would be if I was shorter.
Jacques, you're sort of compact, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it used to be a big advantage because you didn't add weight to the car. So being smaller, usually you weigh less. Where now you add weight to the car, but you still can't reach the pedals.
There's a question from Andrea Boardman.
What do your wives and girlfriends think about you being a racing driver?
This is a good one for you, Jacques. What does Sandrine think?
Well, she used to have no clue what racing was about, and at least now she understands. But she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the risk. She thinks it's more dangerous than it actually is.
Chris Barry.
Yes, do you know what's going on elsewhere in the race, even though you can't see it?
Rubens.
The radio on. Yeah, put the radio.
How much can you hear on that radio? Can they tell you everything on the radio?
Well, you can hear always. That's all I can hear. So I actually lost a podium finish because I crashed with Mika. And it was the last lap. I didn't know. It was very noisy. I couldn't see the board because the board was on the, 10 meters from braking point. And I went into the to the pits. He overtook me again. That was a pity.
Katayama-san, I hesitate to ask you this, but do you always know where you are?
I didn't understand.
You always know what's going on in the race?
Yeah, it's I think easy to understand by the radio.
John McCririck.
What I'd like to know, lads, is those little signs they hold out from the pit lane. How can you read them? Surely tic-tac would be better. You'll understand the tic-tac far easier.
Because we're going flat out. Can you actually read the signs, Jacques?
Yeah, you do. You get used to it. You know what to look for. And it depends the color that's on. You have to ask for something that really grabs your eye, because the problem is you read the other people's board and you always miss yours.
I can't help noticing you're wearing windows over your eyes at the moment. Well, you drive in contacts, don't you?
No, I don't wear anything, because if I see too much, I'm afraid to get scared. I don't wear anything.
Gentlemen, this has been powerfully interesting stuff, and I'd like to thank you, and especially I'd like to thank the members of the audience who put the questions on behalf of us all. Thank you all very much. The public's voice should be heard, but there can be no doubt which voice the public prefers to hear when it comes to Formula One, as the public always has in millions, when the commentary is done in his own imitable but unforgettable style by Murray Walker. Murray, you've been the voice of Formula One since 1978, when major television coverage was first introduced. We thought we'd lost you last year, but here you are at the start of the 97 season. Why are you still doing it? What's so great about it?
It's not generally known, but surprisingly, I actually have something in common with Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve, and that is that, like them, I had a famous father in motorsport. And I had delusions of being able to follow him, and tried, but unlike them, I wasn't very good. And you know what they say, those that can do, and those that can't talk about it.
So, commentate, yeah.
So I started talking about it, and I'm lucky enough to go all over the world and meet some wonderful people and attend some fabulous races, and all I have to do is talk about it.
The arrival of Formula One on ITV this year will bring a whole new audience to the sport. For their benefit, how does the season work?
Well, it starts in Australia and it finishes in October in Portugal. There are 17 races. The object of the exercise is to be world champion if you're a driver, and world championship constructor if you are a constructor. And in order to do that, you get points. There are 10 points for first place, down to 1 point for sixth position, 10, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. The qualifying happens on a Saturday afternoon. There's just 1 hour where each of the drivers, and there's going to be 24 of them this year, get to do 12 laps, just 12 laps, and in that time, times are measured to 1,000th of a second, and the object of the exercise is to get on the front row of the grid.
What's your personal forecast among the top drivers for 97?
My forecast for 1997, and you know what happens when I make a forecast, my forecast for 1997 is that Jacques Villeneuve will be world champion because he knows about Formula One now. He's in what everybody expects to be the best car, the Williams Renault, but there are 4 people sitting here behind me who could be world champion this year. Mika Häkkinen could be world champion this year. He's yet to win a race, but if the McLaren is as good as we think it's going to be this year, he could be world champion. David Coulthard could be world champion. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who's making his debut in the Williams team, all he's got to do, most people think, is beat Jacques Villeneuve, so he could be world champion. And we all hope that Damon is going to get the job done again. Damon is actually going to have a very tough job. Let's not underrate it, because he's got a new car, he's got a new engine, new tyres. All the team are going to be working together for the first time. But hopefully he will at least be winning 1 or 2 races.
I don't know if it's diplomatic of you, but in the presence of all these drivers, you haven't mentioned the one guy who must be haunting all of them, and that's Schumacher.
Simply because he's not here. But Clive, if Schumacher is in a Ferrari this year, which is as good as he deserves it to be, none of those chaps behind me will see which way he went.
Thank you very much, Murray Walker. Yeah. And as Murray Walker tunes his vocal cords for yet another season, we go by satellite link to the Ferrari command bunker somewhere in Europe to meet the man who's double world champion already and threatens to do it again this season. Who else but Michael Schumacher? Hello, Michael.
Hello, Clive. I'm so sorry not to be with you tonight. I'm going to try next time.
There are people here in the studio saying you've got a good chance of being world champion again this year. What do you say about that?
Obviously, Ferrari, myself, we will try our best to make that happen. It's going to be a very difficult job to do, as we have very big contenders. Williams is going to be very strong this season. Benetton, McLaren, for sure have improved. And I hope we have been able to do the same. So it's going to be hard, but we will try.
Who do you think is going to be your biggest rival this year?
That sounds like I would definitely fight for the championship. Whether that's the case, we first have to prove. I think the favourite guys for the championship is going to be the Williams drivers, in particular Heinz-Harald. I think as his talent is very high, and Villeneuve. The rest we have to see how the new car's doing. We don't know right now. We're going to be sure in Melbourne, then we see what's the potential of all the cars.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a great season full of healthy rivalry. Have you got a message for all these drivers gathered here in the studio who will be competing against you?
Well, the only message I have is don't go so fast. Drive a bit slowly, drive carefully, and just take care about myself.
Mikhail Schumacher, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, Damon, it looks like Michael's been working on his sense von humour.
We've still got a little way to go, though, haven't we?
Gentlemen, it's been a unique experience to see all your smiling faces together when you're not bumping helmets. Thank you very much. It's been a once-in-a-lifetime occasion tonight because Formula One, in becoming a world of its own, has tended to lose itself as a community. And the pressure of secret business has isolated people who belong together. Tonight, I hope, we help to start something new, or perhaps restore something old. The spirit in which Grand Prix racing first came to be, as a joust between young men with spare energy, a movable feast, a carnival on tour, a high-stakes but gallant game for the brave and the bright. Inside the helmets are faces, personalities. As I hope we've shown tonight, it would be good all round if we could get to know them better. A dream, you might say. But then the whole thing is a dream anyway. Driving at 200 miles an hour with your backside an inch off the ground? 20 of them at once? Are you kidding? They do? Can I watch?
You may like to know that the official ITV Grand Prix guide is now available, price £9.99 from all good bookshops.